All right, folks, we've reached the interview portion of BumpCity, the podcast, and today I get to talk to Miss Jen Muller. If you don't know who Jen Muller is, I don't know what you've been doing with your life, honestly. She's a sideline analyst for Root Sports, a sideline reporter for the Seahawks. She's on the Mariners broadcast team, and she has her own consulting company, Talk Sporty to Me. And let's not forget, she is an author. So if you don't know, now you know. Jen Muller, how you doing today?
I am well, thanks. And I love that intro. I'm going to bring you around as my hype man everywhere I go.
I got you. If you need one, I'm your dude. So I'm sure you've heard about what's been going on. I don't even want to say their name. It's just the Washington, D.C. football team. You heard about what's going on over there. And the first thing I thought of are the women that I work with. You know, I work with you, Jen Muller. I work with Angie Mintique, Jessamine McIntyre, like powerful women who have been in this sports industry for a while. And it just had me thinking, like, what are some of the experiences? What are your thoughts on this? I don't even know where to take it. I just want to let you talk and just shed some light on us, especially men, and this whole situation.
Well, and I appreciate that. It's definitely a dialogue that needs to happen. I think when I saw the story, none of it truly surprised me because I have had similar experiences in different parts of my career. I think what surprises me is the fact that there's more women than ever working in sports, and yet there still isn't the strength in numbers that I would have hoped we would have gotten to when I got into the industry 20 years ago. I mean, 20 years ago, I got into the industry and my first TV boss reprimanded me after a show. This is a show that I was helping to produce, and I asked a question. And he said, "I did not hire you to ask questions. I hired you to wear short skirts and to open the doors.
Goodness.
You are not here to think." And I learned a lot of things from that experience. The first thing I did after that was I left the office. And I got really upset, and I didn't know where else. I didn't know how to respond to that at work. And I left and I went home. I didn't live very far from the station. And I thought, I'm not dealing with this. Well, it's my first job out of college. You better figure out how to deal with something, right? And I sat at home for a little bit, and I thought, you know what? That's not the right response. Also, when you work in sports, you work nighttime hours. So it's not like you could just go up to HR or that there was another person in the building, right, at that point that was appropriate to talk to. You were kind of just on your own to figure this out. And I went back and I thought, I am not going to let him dictate how I handle my job responsibilities. When I tried to bring it up to somebody who could do something about it, it became a he said, she said conversation. And so what I learned, in addition to not letting somebody else control my attitude or how I showed up to do my job, was I never wanted to be in a position where it was my word against somebody else's, and I, being the younger person or the female, and the whatever the issue was, I did not want to have to defend myself and make people believe that I was the one telling the truth, when he'd been in the industry at that point for at least 15 or 20 years. So I changed the way that I had conversations with people. Anytime a male manager wanted to have a conversation after that, particularly at that station, it happened in a glass conference room with somebody else in there, so that I didn't have to feel bad about that.
Yeah.
It's tough, and it's not a fun situation. And I think for a long time, you just don't deal with it because there's not much of an alternative, right?
Yeah.
If you say too much, then you become the troublemaker or the problem, and people just don't want to deal with that. If you speak out and you tell people what's happened and you go to HR. Now, I'm going to pause right here. I'm going to say these are all of my thoughts from 20 years ago, okay? Yeah. You find yourself just like, a lot of the women interviewed for that article said, you make choices based on the options that you have in the situation that you're in. And if the situation is, I need a job and I'm at the beginning of my career, I'm just going to have to figure out how to tough it out. I also want to say, now that I've gotten to this point, and I'm so glad that these conversations are happening, there are a lot of great guys out there. I work with some amazing men. You are one of them. And it's not just because you're interviewing me on your podcast. I know who has my back in a locker room. And I know that you were one of the guys that had my back. I have male mentors, advocates, sponsors, people that are actively pushing me forward or putting my name in the hat. And so I don't want this to be all guys are bad, or this is a terrible industry to work in.
Yeah.
It's just important that we know what the conversation needs to be around it, and that we're no longer afraid for either our job, our reputation, whatever repercussions happen, to have some of these conversations.
Yeah. So that you started your journey 20 years ago, and you've had some of the same experiences that we're learning about in this Washington, D.C. organization. When you saw this story, or you read the story and you heard about what was happening, were you surprised that it was still happening, or were you like, yeah, eventually something like this was going to come out?
I am surprised that it is still happening at such I don't know what to quantify it as, right? It's not the number, because I'm sure that there's even more than that, right? It's not just a one-off. This has happened for a long time with a lot of people, and that's disheartening, right? That they tried to speak out a while ago and that it didn't get fixed. And I know that that's not unlike a lot of problems in society, right? It takes a long time to get change. But yeah, I was. And part of that, I'm going to be a little bit naive, and I work for great organizations. I don't have to think about all of these things that I thought about 20 years ago and that I would dread. And this isn't even 20 years ago. I mean, this is some of it in more recent history.
Yeah.
I don't have to think about that. And when it's not weighing on you every single day the same way, I guess you just kind of assume that it's gotten better for other people, right? If it's gotten better for me in some regard, certainly it's gotten better for somebody else. And I think that was it, to realize there are still a lot of people that have never found any relief, right?
Yeah.
I have some relief and a sense of peace, and I know how to handle this. I work with great people, and it makes me sad, and it makes me disappointed and disheartened. And I just, it's a tough thing to believe.
So you seem pretty mature about that situation. You said you never wanted to be in that situation again. You're going to make sure when you talk to another man, it was in a glass office and there was another person there. Did you confide in someone? Did someone give you that recommendation, or was that just something you came up with all on your own?
You know, the logistics of that particular building just worked well for that. Mm-hmm. And there was 2 other guys that I worked with in that sports department. And one of them said, look, I would love to be on your side. I didn't hear the conversation, so I can't weigh in on anything. So he suggested that he would be happy to sit in and have any conversation that, needed to be had. And so that's kind of where that came from. But, even now, I would tell people, whether you had somebody in the room with you when a conversation or an accusation, when something happened, the first thing I've done is gone to confide in somebody at the time that it happened. Whether that person could do anything or not, it was so that there was some sort of documentation. I told you when it happened. This is what I experienced. These are my thoughts. I understand that you can't do anything. I just want you to be my confidant on this one.
Yeah. And, Jen, the thing that disappoints me most about this story is that it may deter women from getting into this industry. And you see women like yourself and Jessamine and all these other women that I see and I admire, and you guys are bosses. I mean, I look at y'all and I'm like, they're doing their thing. And I don't want this to deter the sports world from having another great mind really enter it. So, what advice would you give young women who are thinking about entering this world?
It is still a great industry, and you can still meet great people, and there are still opportunities. And while I would love to have not experienced all of the things that resonate, whether it be this story, or if you watch the morning show, the series that I think it was Prime did, where Steve Carell, it's like, that one hits pretty close to home too. Like, there's a lot of things out there that hit close to home. It's not a reason to assume that you're not going to fit there. I would say, for people that are looking at the industry, and I would say this about anything, don't assume the worst before you get there, right? Start making your alliances now. Reach out to people like me or to Jessamine. Laura Oakman does a great job. you can have your team of people, your advocates and your confidants built before you ever get into your first job, so that we can help you have those conversations, or we can show you how to, maneuver differently, or we can advocate on your behalf. There are things that you can do now, but if you're interested in sports, quitting sports is not what I would encourage you to do. And I would also say this: these aren't just issues that need to be dealt with in sports. I realize people look at a locker room and they assume that it is a completely crazy circus environment where there's like no rules. I mean, people ask me all the time what it's like in a locker room, right, Bob?
Yeah.
Like, no, you have to understand, those guys are dialed in.
Yeah.
I experience issues when I go into corporate environments, more so than I do when I'm in locker rooms. So this is not just a thing that happens with some teams. This is an everywhere thing. And everybody needs to be able to have these conversations, and everybody needs to have their advocates and their teams built up before they find themselves in that position and they feel alone. They start doubting themselves. They wonder what it is that they've done to cause the problem. It's nothing, by the way. Yeah. And before it gets to the point where it shakes their confidence so much that they can't do what it is that they love to do or that they want to do.
Yeah. You've heard it from Jen Mueller. I mean, I can't say enough about this woman. She's helped me get opportunities in this industry. You're a leader, you're a pioneer, and I appreciate you taking time out of your day. What else are you doing? What's next for Jen Mueller? I mean, you got 1,000 things going at a time. Fill me in. What's going on?
Yeah, well, I'm still doing some virtual corporate training. So we've got that. It's business communication. I always bring in some sports, but right now I'm doing a lot of online training on how to be on camera, because we are all on Zoom. And so this is something that I am trained to do after 20 years in the industry. I've been doing a lot of semi-private coaching and private coaching on getting people camera ready. And that's been a fun new challenge during this pandemic, where I haven't been at ballparks or stadiums very much, but I can utilize the camera skill sets.
Just expanding the portfolio, doing what you do. If you're not following her on Instagram, it's Talk Sporty to me, and then on Twitter, is that the same Talk Sporty to me?
Yep, you can find me there, and that's the website too. I try to make it really easy for people.
There you go. Make it simple. Young ladies across the country, if you're ever looking for some guidance and some mentorship, I will gladly push you towards Jen Mueller. Jen, I appreciate you taking time out of your busy day.
Absolutely. Thanks, Bump.
All right.